microscopes. You can expect about a dozen microscopes in the floor, models, no pigs. Okay. We're going to start with the male system, looking at a section through the testis. And again, mostly what you see are sections from many tubes. What are these tubes called? What are these? Seminiferous tubules. All right. And what happens in the seminiferous tubules? Specifically in the wall of the seminiferous tubule. What's going on here? Spermatogenesis. This is formation of sperm cells. All right. It occurs in the walls of seminiferous tubules. The sperm then are released into the lumen and carried through the various tubes of the male reproductive system. Most of the cells that we see here, at least the nuclei of those cells, are called spermatogenic cells. And on the slides, you can refer to them just as that. On the bubble charts that I went over yesterday, you must know the names of the specific cells, as well as whether they're haploid or diploid and how many chromosomes they would carry. Okay? There are, however, some other cells in the wall of the seminiferous tubule. In fact, they make up most of the mass. Their cytoplasm makes up most of the mass of the wall. They have a more distinctive nucleus. Now, most of the spermatogenic cells have kind of looks like a granular appearance to their nucleus, like we see here. These cells, though, tend to be more oval. At least the nucleus is more oval. They have a prominent nucleolus, you can see there and there. And these are the nuclei of the sustentacular cells. What are sustentacular cells? What do they do?
They provide nutrients.
They provide nutrients for the sperm. Sustenance, if you will. Okay? They're also called the Sertoli cells. Either term is acceptable.
Are they always going to be located around the outer edge?
They're usually more to the outside. You can see one right there. There's another one right here. There and there, especially. Yeah, they're usually more to the outside of the wall, farther from the lumen. Okay, there's another cell type that you need to be able to identify. These are pretty easy because they're found in spaces between adjacent seminiferous tubules. These are called interstitial cells or Leydig cells. What's their function?
Produce sex hormones.
Produce male sex hormones, the androgens, primarily testosterone. Okay? And of course, those hormones are released into the blood, not in the lumen of the seminiferous tubules. The sperm being here, we don't see any right here. Okay? Something else you should recognize, and that's this connective tissue membrane that surrounds the organ. It's found in many organs. What is this? That's the capsule. It has a fancy name. It's called the tunica albuginea. The tunica albuginea, which also is the same name applied to the capsule around the ovary. Tunica albuginea. Connective tissue membrane surrounding, protecting the organ.
Is that on our handout? Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's on your handout.
Okay.
All these terms are on your handout. Okay? And here are more of the interstitial cells you see here. So they're in the spaces, interstitial spaces among these seminiferous tubules, not part of the wall. And most of the slides that you will see, the testes will look like this. Again, you're going to see lots of seminiferous tubules, which we see here. And again, if you go to the outside of the organ, here again is the tunica albuginea, the capsule that surrounds the organ. And again, these are sections, many sections through the seminiferous tubules, of which the testes are formed. And again, if you look at the walls here, most of the nuclei you'll see here again are spermatogenic cells directly involved in sperm cell production. Then here and there you're going to see these oval nuclei with a nucleolus. There's one up here as well. These are the sustentacular cell nuclei. sneaky. Here's one right here. They tend to have more of an oval nucleus, prominent nucleus. One right there as well. They tend to be more to the outside.
And they provide nutrients?
Pardon me?
They provide nutrients?
That's the nucleus of the sustentacular cell. And those I expect you to pick out. Okay, you should be able to identify. The rest of these you can just call somatogenic cells. Here
Dr.
again,
I
what?
thought you said that they provide most of the mass.
They do. Their cytoplasm makes up most of the mass. It's hard to tell here, but actually most of this, what you see here, is actually the cytoplasm of the sustentacular cell. If you look, there's a diagram in your book. Okay, it shows part of the wall. I think it's in yellow. You'll notice it looks like the somatogenic cells are kind of isolated in amongst the yellow. That's because they're lying amongst the cytoplasm of the sustentacular cells. Okay? So yeah, most of the mass of the wall is actually cytoplasm of the sustentacular cells. Okay, out here again, tissue in between would be interstitial cells, or Leydig cells that produce the male sex hormones. Got one more slide here, the testes. And this one shows something we didn't see in the others. Namely the sperm. You see what appears to be a bunch of hairs? Those are the flagella of the sperm cells, which we see here. For a while, basically the head attaches here to the lining of the wall of the seminiferous tubule, and eventually they're released into the lumen. But the flagella project into the lumen, or cavity, and eventually pass through the tubes of the male reproductive tract. And this actually is from a rat, and rat sperm look a little different than human sperm. In fact, they look like fish hooks to me. You can see like right here, sort of like a fish hook without a barb. See a bunch of them here. Those are rat sperm. Human male sperm basically look kind of like oval. They got kind of an oval head. Okay, so different sperm from different animals often look a little different. And then also, here again we've got the capsule, the tunic albuginea. Again, you've got interstitial cells here lying outside between the seminiferous tubules. Okay. Any questions on the testes? Okay. Sperm are reduced in the testes. Remember, when they leave the testes, they're immature. They're picked up, they go through a series of tubes, but they don't expect you to know, but eventually they're picked up by the tubes of an organ that lies alongside the testes. What is that organ called? That's the epididymis. And the function of the epididymis? Store sperm, and also it's the site where the sperm matures. So that's the function of the epididymis, sperm storage, and site of sperm cell maturation. Because when they leave the testes, the sperm are not mature. They're incapable of fertilizing the egg. Now the epididymis consists of a bunch of tubes. You see some of them here, cut in section. This big mass in the middle here are sperm cells. I'd like you to know the structure of these tubes. And you can follow along on your lab objective sheet. If you go to, this is on your first page there. Under epididymis, everybody see that at the top? All right, first lists the epithelium that lines the tubes. That's what this purple layer is. And notice, this is a pseudostratified columnar epithelium. And notice I didn't say ciliated. It is not ciliated, even though it appears to be.
Oh, thanks.
If you look at it, focus up and down. See, it's got kind of a fuzzy border here. Looks like pseudostratified cilia and columnar epithelium, like lining the nasal cavity, nasopharynx, and so on. These are not cilia, they're microvilli. Okay? Sort of like when you looked at the brush border in the small intestine, they looked like cilia too, but in fact they were microvilli. They're to decrease surface area for absorption. Here it's to increase surface area for absorption of excess water and also to provide nutrients for the sperm. Again, the sperm have to be kept viable. And of course, these are the sperm cells. Millions. So this layer here is pseudostratified columnar epithelium, not ciliated. Unfortunately, these are called stereocilia. But they have nothing to do with movement. They remove excess water, and they provide nutrients for the sperm. So if I ask the function of these, don't put movement, all right? Move the sperm. What moves the sperm is contraction of muscle, smooth muscle in the wall of this tube. Not these, microvilli. Again, you call them microvilli or stereocilia, but not associated with movement. Okay, just deep to that, or just external to the epithelium here, is what we've seen before. This is a mucous membrane. What is that areolar connective tissue known as? Lamina propria again. Okay, lamina propria. Then you got your muscle layers out here. Now, if I ask the tissue, smooth muscle. The arrangement, the first layer here is longitudinal, smooth muscle, like we saw on the wall of the urinary bladder. It's just the same arrangement. Okay? Get out here, circular, smooth muscle. You can actually see there's a difference here. Don't have to use your imagination. You get out here again, and you're back to longitudinal. Okay? So, longitudinal smooth muscle, next to lamina propria, middle layer, circular smooth muscle, and an outer layer, again, of longitudinal smooth muscle. Okay? Like we saw on the wall of the urinary bladder. Again, please don't give me the whole wall, all right? I've done a last lab test, some people put the pointer there and they gave me the whole thing. That was nice, I'm glad you knew it, but when I point to something and say, what is it? Answer it, okay? What is it? Don't give me the whole layer, because then it'll say, which one? And then you got no credit for it. Okay? All right. From here then, the sperm passes by a single tube from the epididymis in the scrotum up to the body cavity and then into the urethra within the prostate gland. Okay, so this tube that is carrying sperm from the epididymis to the prostatic urethra is full. What do we call it?
Vas deferens.
Yes, the vas deferens or ductus deferens. It is not the spermatic cord. Be careful. A lot of slides over there are labeled spermatic cord. And of course, the labels will be exposed. So if I have the pointer on this, as you identify it, don't say spermatic cord. This is within the spermatic cord. So it's only one thing within the spermatic cord. Spermatic cord actually contains a lot of blood vessels, which we see here. It also has nerve fibers, which we see here. A lot of connective tissue as well. So it's like a cable, a bunch of wires. One of those wires, the prominent one, is the tube that actually carries the sperm. This is the ductus deferens, or vas deferens. Okay? And again, once you know the layers of the wall, we look at that. Here's the lumen where the sperm would pass. Here's the epithelium again. And it's the same as what we saw in the epididymis, which was pseudostratified columnar. It is not ciliated. Pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Again, what moves the sperm, because they're passage here, they're not swimming, contracts this smooth muscle in the wall. And again, you got the same layers of smooth muscle that you had in the epididymis. They're actually the same tissues as well. When you look at this, perhaps see a little bit better here. Here's the epithelium, pseudostratified columnar. This layer right here, lamina propria again, that's a connective tissue. And out here, we got the muscle layers. Smooth muscle. Arrangement, longitudinal, with that inner layer. Then we got the circular out here. then the longitudinal again. Out here. So, again, you can see this better under the microscope because you're pretty sharp. Okay. So again, epithelium, which is what?
Pseudostratified column.
Pseudostratified columnar, again not ciliated. Here's your lamina propria. First layer of muscle here, longitudinal smooth muscle, middle layer, circular smooth muscle, outer layer, longitudinal smooth muscle. So same arrangement, same tissues that we saw in the epidermis, just a larger version. There's only one tube instead of a bunch of them. Okay? Function is to carry sperm from the epidermis to the urethra. What's the distal end of this tube called? Just before it goes into the prostate gland. What do we call that? The ampulla. Very good. And where it goes through the prostate gland, it's also got a fancy name. What's it called? Ejaculatory duct. And then it joins with a prostatic urethra. Okay, so if you're tracing, you would go from seminiferous tubules in the testes, and you can skip the bunch of tubes in between, to the epididymis, epididymis to the ductus deferens, to the ampulla of the ductus deferens, the ejaculatory duct, to prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and then out through the penile or spongy urethra. Any questions on this? All right, let's look at the section to the penis. This is an immature penis, so it's not very well developed, but you'll see some important structures which I'd like you to know. First off, the covering, external covering, the epithelium here. Okay, it is a non-keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. So you see here, you can see multiple layers of flattened nuclei. Non-keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. Good, thick, protective layer. It's the same type of epithelium we see lining the vagina. Non-keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. As I mentioned before, most of the mass of the penis is made up of erectile tissue, of which you have three columns. This column that we see right here surrounds the urethra. Okay? And here you can see part of the urethra. The urethra itself is lined with what kind of epithelium? What is this?
Transitional.
It's transitional. Just like we saw lining the urinary bladder, okay, and the ureter. Okay? Now eventually this often changes to a stratified columnar to a stratified squamous, but here it is transitional. You just call it transitional epithelium. All right, this tissue out here, which is full of little cavities or sinuses, that is the corpus spongiosum. So that's the colorectal tissue that surrounds the urethra. It expands distally in the glands as well. You can see that nicely on the models. Okay? And that's why the part of the urethra that runs through the penis is called the spongy urethra, because it runs through the corpus spongiosum. And here we see it again. Okay, this is urethra, the lumen urethra. And again, all this tissue around it here, corpus spongiosum. Now there are two additional columns that are dorsal to the urethra. Now here they're not very well developed because this is an immature penis. But to me they sort of look like little bean-shaped structures, kind of mirror images of one another. Okay, here and here. Almost like a little lima bean, a little lower magnification. You see right here and here. Those two paired columns of rectal tissue are what? The corpora cavernosa. The corpora cavernosa. Now eventually they'll expand much larger than this. This is an immature penis, that's why they're not very well developed. Here again is urethra. This tissue around here again is the corpus spongiosum. And the two paired dorsal columns, dorsal to the urethra, corpora cavernosa. There's also connective tissue around here which doesn't show too well, it supports. Okay. So on the outside again, covering the penis, non-keratinized stratified squamous, lining the urethra, transitional epithelium, then the 3 columns of erectile tissue, that around the urethra, corpus spongiosum, the 2 columns of erectile tissue dorsal to that, and eventually get much larger, the corpora cavernosa. Any questions? All right. Let's look at the female system, and we'll start with the ovary, a section through the ovary, which we see here. Now this is a cat ovary, so we're going to see a lot of follicles developing, much more than you see in a normal human ovary. Typically in humans, only 1 egg is ovulated at a time. But in cats, dogs, and many domestic animals, they have multiple litters, which means multiple eggs are ovulated at one time. Okay, first off, you look at the edge right here, this dark kind of yellow line right here, this is a layer of simple cuboidal epithelium. Has a fancy name, what's it called? The germinal epithelium, which unfortunately suggests something is developing there. It's not. It's called the germinal epithelium. Deep to that is tissue right in here. That's connective tissue, and that's the capsule, which again, like the capsule around the testes, is called the tunica albuginea. Okay? Tunica albuginea. Then here, we have the developing follicles. Now, there are 3 types of follicles you should be able to identify. Okay? Primordial, primary, and secondary. So let's take a look at them. First, let me just go back. Now, the 2 regions of the ovary, which you can see here very nicely. The outer region, where the follicles are developing, is called what?
Cortex.
That's the cortex. The inner region here, full of blood vessels, nerve fibers, and such, but no follicles.
Medulla.
Medulla. Okay? So follicles are here in the cortex. So let's look at the different follicles and differentiate. Okay, first, those follicles which are more toward the outside, more toward the edge of the cortex, and very numerous, but very small compared to the others, are these. These are primordial follicles. These are the ones that the female is born with. In humans, by the hundreds of thousands, most of these actually degenerate before the woman goes through puberty. Then once she does go through puberty, they begin to develop. Each month, some of these develop, and develop into a primary, and the primary develop into a secondary. In human females, usually one continuous development and becomes the mature Graafian follicle. When that ruptures, it expels the egg cell at ovulation. Although the follicle is mature, the egg cell is not. Okay, so let's look at these. Okay, again, here are your primordial follicles. Very numerous, more toward the outside, and they will develop into this, which is a primary follicle. These are not as numerous, but you can see they're decidedly larger than the primordials. And it appears like just a big cell with a nucleus. This is the nucleus of the egg cell and the cytoplasm. The cells around it are the cells of the follicle. So the follicle is multicellular, consists of many smaller cells called granulosa cells. Within that is one single egg cell, which is much larger than the follicle cells, nucleus and cytoplasm. And each follicle is a developing egg cell, but again in a very immature state here. All right, this then will develop into a much larger follicle called the secondary follicle. The secondary follicle is characterized by this fluid-filled cavity that we see here, and that cavity is called an antrum. And again, you can see the egg cell right here, nucleus cytoplasm. And here are some cells of the follicle that remain with the egg cell. They got a fancy name, it's called the corona radiata. And that's one of the things the sperm cell has to penetrate to get into the cytoplasmic egg cell to fertilize the egg cell. And that's why it needs those digestive enzymes in the acrosome to basically digest its way in. Here's the fluid filled cavity. This is an antrum. Here are the cells of the follicle, collectively called granulosa cells. But those granulosa cells that surround and remain with the egg, even at ovulation, go on the radii. Question?
No, you answered that.
Okay. You can see there are a number of these in this section for the ovary. Again, this is a cat ovary, so we've got a lot of them developed. Here's another one. Now, frequently, since it's a very thin section of tissue, you may miss the egg. It may be above or below the plane of section. But that is another secondary. That's the fluid filled cavity.
That's secondary, but it hasn't developed.
Secondary. Secondaries have that fluid filled cavity. Here's another one.
Slice missed the egg.
Okay.
Pardon me?
I was telling you, the slice missed the egg.
Yeah. This is what I call the classical textbook picture of a secondary follicle. All right? Here's the egg cell, nucleus and cytoplasm. Here are the cells that surround it, corona radiata. Here are the rest of the follicle cells. It's called granulosa cells. And here you can see the egg cell and the corona radiata project into this fluid filled cavity, the antrum, sort of like a little peninsula. That's ideally what you see. That's what you see in a textbook. Okay? Secondary follicle. And these are two, we just missed the egg. It's one side or the other. It's plain and simple. All right? And you go across here, and you can see there are even more. Okay? Here's another primary follicle. Down here, of course, is your primordial. See the difference in size. But again, when you got that fluid filled cavity, you're looking at a secondary. There's another primary. Okay? These are primordial down here again. Okay? And again, here's another, that's the antrum, another secondary follicle. Another one, another. Okay? Questions? All right. So we've got another slide for the ovary. Again, this is cat ovary that we're looking at. Now this one's a little confusing when you first look at it because you've got attached the ovary, this structure, which is not an ovary, but this is part of the oviduct. All right, got a lot of folds in the interior. That's where the egg would pass en route to the uterus. Okay, so the ovary is attached to it here. And that's what we see here. And again, you're going to see some structures that you saw before. Okay. Here are the follicles, the small, very numerous ones, more to the outside. What kind of follicles?
Primordial.
Primordial. These are the most immature. What appears to be a nucleus inside these, that's actually a developing egg cell, very primitive state. Okay. Here we have a primary starting to go to secondary. Here we have a secondary follicle. Again, this is the egg cell and nucleus. Here again is the egg cell. Here are the cells around the corona radiata, and there's that fluid filled cavity, the antrum. This is characteristic of secondary follicle. Okay. Here's another secondary follicle. It's kind of beat up. You can see here's the egg cell, nucleus, and cytoplasm, the corona radiata, and this is the rest of the follicle, which is torn. But again, it's got a fluid filled cavity. Secondary follicle. Okay. And again, they go through stages. You know, it's not just bang from the primordial to primary. It grows and develops. Okay. And here's another secondary. There's the corona radiata, there's the egg cell, there's the antrum. And what I wanted to show you here on this slide, particularly, this large structure right here. What is it? Any guesses? What develops from the Graafian follicle after the egg is released? Ovulation. The corpus luteum. This is the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum is a big structure, remains in the ovary, and it's a major sex hormone producer. Estrogens, which are released by the developing follicle, under the influence of FSH, but also progesterone. Estrogen has built up the uterine lining, also the mammary gland, the tissue of the mammary glands for milk secretion. The progesterone sort of puts the finishing touches on it and maintains the endometrium. a major source of female sex hormones. This does not remain intact. The endometrium will degenerate, slough off, and you got the menstrual flow. There are two hormones that maintain this. What's the first hormone that maintains the corpus luteum? Luteinizing hormone. Because the high levels of progesterone and estrogen, that has a negative feedback effect and shuts down or inhibits FSH and LH secretion. So after about a week and a half, 10 days, there's no pregnancy, LH levels fall off, this degenerates, estrogen and progesterone levels fall off. Since the progesterone is maintaining that endometrium degenerates, sloughs off, and you have the menstrual flow. If pregnancy occurs, then there's another hormone that maintains the corpus luteum, which is HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, produced by cells around the embryo. So it's only seen in pregnancy. That will maintain this corpus luteum for about the first trimester of pregnancy, after which time the placenta has reached a state where it's a major source of estrogen and progesterone. And then this will decline again. But then it's no longer needed. And then it'll shrivel up, then kind of white. That's known as the corpus albicans.
So when it's shriveling up, that means there's no pregnancy?
Say again?
When it's shriveling up, that means there's no pregnancy?
Well, yeah, it's gonna shut down after about a week and a half. There's no pregnancy.
No, I think she means when it turns into the albuminia.
Well, the corpus albicans is going to develop, or it's going to result when this thing does shut down. So in pregnancy, it'll be after about 3 months. No pregnancy, it's only about a week and a half.
Okay, so keep going.
Yeah, eventually it's going to shut down. It just takes longer in pregnancy, but this ought to be maintained the first 3 months until the placenta is enough to be able to source of female sex hormone.
And what was that hormone called? The HCG?
HCG.
And is
By
that
the
what
way,
they
that is on your menstrual cycle that we went over yesterday, a handout. You notice it?
Yes.
You better. It's not on your hormone sheet. There's another one that's on there that's not on your hormone sheet. NTWA, GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. Those two are responsible for as well.
Now the HCG, is that what the home pregnancy test pick up?
Yeah, that's what you test for a pregnancy test.
Okay.
It reaches high levels of blood, which goes over the urine, and usually when women's tested for pregnancy, what do they do? They test the urine.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not produced by the woman's body, so it's not produced in a non-pregnant woman, it's produced by cells around the developing embryo.
Okay.
And usually you'll get a positive test before you realize you've missed a period, so you can tell you're pregnant before that.
Wow.
Like maybe by about 3 weeks or so, you can actually determine that. Okay, so that's the corpus luteum. And you can see it on the bottles of the ovary too. Okay. Now, the tube, of course, that carries the egg from the ovary at ovulation is the uterine tube, but it can also be called the oviduct or the fallopian tube in human females. And here we have it in section. You can see the wall is sewn into many folds, which we see here. So the egg would pass down the lumen. Now the egg, of course, is non-motile. So what moves the egg? Peristalsis, the smooth muscle in the wall, and also the fact that this tissue, the epithelium that lines it, which is a simple, simple columnar epithelium, is ciliated for the most part. And number two, the finger-like projections of the expanded open end of the oviduct kind of drapes over the ovary, called the infundibulum, those finger-like projections, which are ciliated, vibri. They help to draw the egg into the oviduct from the body cavity. Okay, and here we can see. Focus up now and you can see it's got kind of a fuzzy border. Okay, so it's a simple cuboidal epithelium that for the most part is ciliate. So that helps to push the egg down or carry the egg down the tube.
The cuboidal or columnar?
Simple, what did I say? Should be columnar. Simple columnar epithelium.
Okay.
Did I say cuboidal?
You did that. I got
Okay,
it.
it's right on the page.
Don't want to confuse myself.
It's on there, isn't it?
It's right on here, that's
Okay,
right.
right on the way.
That's what
Okay.
that
You do what I can. It is simple columnar, all right? Okay, and deep to that, again, this is a mucous membrane. So what do we have? Deep to the epithelium? Lamina lamina propria. And then deeper external of that, we got the muscle layers. But unfortunately, the arrangement of the smooth muscle here is not the same as it was in the epididymis and the ductus deferens of the male. It is reversed. And don't ask me why. Inner layer is circular smooth muscle. The outer layer is longitudinal, just like we saw in the GI tract.
There's not 3 layers?
No, there's only 2 layers here.
Okay.
Inner layer, you're asked, tissue, smooth muscle,
Smooth muscle.
arrangement, circular. That's adjacent to lamina propria. Outer layer, more to the outside of the wall, is the longitudinal. Just the opposite of what we saw, unfortunately, in the male tubes, epididymis and ductus deferens. Okay? Now don't ask me why it's reversed. Okay? So this is like the GI tract wall. So again, what moves the egg? Peristalsis, this muscle in the wall, and also the ciliated epithelium. Help to move. All right, now we got a couple sections through the uterus. Now the uterus, as you know, goes through different stages during the menstrual cycle. Because the outer layer, or I should say the lining, which is called the endometrium, is going to enlarge in preparation for a pregnancy. So it's going to get thicker, more vascularized, and glandular. If there's no pregnancy, it degenerates and sloughs off, and that makes up the bulk of the menstrual flow. And since a lot of blood vessels simply break in the process, there's a lot of blood associated with the menstrual cycle. Okay? As you know. I'm not going to require you to know the different stages by the slides. What I do want you to know are the layers of the wall. So you've got to be able to tell me the endometrium and the 2 layers, the outer layer, or I should say the layer facing the uterine cavity, stratum functionalis, and the inner layer, the basal layer, which faces the myometrium, the middle layer, is the stratum basalis. And then pick out the myometrium, and on the very outside, do the perimetrium, which faces the body cavity. Okay, so let's look at that. Now, as I said before, by convention, the first day of the cycle is considered the first day of menstrual flow. That's day 1. All right? So one of these slides is labeled proliferating phase. And this is the phase where the menstrual flow has ended and the uterus, basically the endometrium, is regenerating. That's what we see here. So this be maybe 5, 7 days, whenever the menstrual flow ceases. That's probably about, about a week or so. What we see here, this of course is uterine cavity. This is the endometrium, but more specifically, the stratum functionalis. You can see it's not that thick yet, because here's the myometrium. This is all the stratum functionalis. Lots of glands, lots of blood vessels. It's getting ready for implantation of the embryo should fertilization occur. Okay? And again, most of this would be, and here you can see a little bit of the epithelium. Now the epithelium here, which lines the uterus, is a simple columnar, not ciliated like in the oviducts, but just simple columnar. Okay? So this is stratum functionalis. And then the basal layer, right down here, adjacent to myometrium, is the stratum basalis. It's the stratum functionalis that is sloughed off, degenerate, with the menstrual flow. But part of the endometrium remains, that's the stratum basalis. It's a source of new cells for regeneration of the stratum functionalis. So you never lose the entire endometrium, just the surface part, which usually is a thicker layer. Okay? And again, they're hard to tell apart. So again, if you see the pointer up here, and you can see in the field, the uterine cavity, you may assume it's stratum functionalis. Okay? If it's down here, and you can see it's adjacent to the myometrium. The myometrium looks a little lighter stained, kind of like a pink. This is smooth muscle. Then you may assume it's stratum basalis. Okay? Again, that is not sloughed off. That remains intact, and again, it's the source of new cells for regeneration of the stratum functionalis. Okay, and again, this is all myometrium. You see, it's much thicker than the endometrium. This is all myometrium.
expels the,
That's what?
that's what would be called labor pain.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a muscle contraction, which you have during the cycle too. And some women have very severe cramping during the menstrual cycle. And again, it's contracts this muscle. As you know, it's a very powerful muscle. And of course, the function, of course, is to expel the baby at delivery. And what is the hormone that stimulates contracts this muscle?
Oxytocin?
What is it?
Oxytocin?
It's oxytocin. And what produces the oxytocin? Where does it come from?
The pituitary?
The what?
Pituitary?
What part of the pituitary?
Posterior.
Posterior.
Okay, and it's produced by what cells?
Hypothalamus.
It's produced
Neurons of
by
the hypothalamus. Okay.
Neurons. Okay.
And that's why the posterior pituitary, by the nervous tissue, is called the neurohypothesis. Now this one doesn't really show the perimeter. That would be on the edge. Because that's just a thin membrane. Okay. So that's proliferating layer. On the next slide, this one is labeled secretory phase. And this would be at the end of the cycle. And listed as day 23 to day 25. Okay, so it's near the end of the cycle. And at this point now, the endometrium is fully developed and it's ready for implantation of the embryo, should fertilization occur. Here we have it. Okay, so again, here's the uterine cavity, and this is stratum functionalis. But you'll notice, it's the same magnification as the previous slide, the endometrium now is much thicker than it was in the previous slide. This is all stratum functionalis. Highly glandular, lots of blood vessels. It's ready for implantation of the embryo to nourish the embryo and continue embryonic development. And finally here, now we're in the myometrium. Then you see it looks kind of pink. This is the smooth muscle. So this layer here, this would be stratum bathalis, and most of the rest of this would be stratum functionalis. Again, a pointer here, we can see the myometrium, stratum bathalis. Up here, you can see the uterine cavity, okay, stratum functionalis. Okay. So this is proliferate. Now the last slide I'm going to show you is the menstrual phase. This would actually be the beginning of the cycle. And here, now the endometrium, there's not much left of it. Mostly what's left is stratum bathalis. What you see here, the thing is all torn up. You see here. See, the tissue looks like it's eroded, all torn. But again, it's degenerating. You can also see broken blood vessels, as we see here. And more of the same. Blood vessels, you can see the tissue's all torn up. So this is basically, the lining is eroded, it's degenerated, and it's being sloughed off. So much of the endometrium is gone. What's left, okay, down here is a little bit of the basal layer, stratum bathalis. And then right away, we go into the myometrium here, which of course remains intact. This all myometrium, again, very thick layer. This is the thick muscular layer, still in the myometrium.
Wow.
See, it's a very thick layer, very muscular, a very powerful muscle. For a woman, you appreciate that. And then, right on the very outside, you see this thin rim right here? This is perimetrium. Simple squamous epithelium, a little bit of loose connective tissue, but a very thin layer. And it's synonymous with the visceral peritoneum. Remember, it covers many of the organ surfaces in the abdominal pelvic cavity. Peritoneum members and other serous members. The part of the peritoneum would line much of the abdominal pelvic cavity wall. Okay? Any questions? Again, I'm not going to ask you from the slide what phase it is, but you should be able to pick out the layers. Stratum functionalis, stratum bathalis, the endometrium, myometrium. In this case, you can actually see the perimetrium. Pink layer here. Okay. Let's look now at the section for the vagina wall. And this one, as I said before, the lining, the epithelium, is the same as what we saw covering the penis, which is what? What kind of epithelium? A non-keratinized stratified squamous. Here we see it. Non-keratinized stratified squamous. So again, you can see that the tissue consists of multiple cells, and they're flattened cells. We've actually got nuclei right up here to the surface. Here's the mucous membrane. So non-keratinized stratified squamous lines the vagina, also covering the surface of the penis. Then deep to that, again, it's a mucous membrane. So what is this stuff? Lamina propria again. Now the vagina is a fairly thick layer, as you'll see. Okay, here's the epithelium again. And it's lighter pink. This is the lamina propria. We go out here to the edge. Okay. Epithelium again, it's all lamina propria. Very thick. When we get down here, and now you can see, looks kind of wavy, the tissue. This is the smooth muscle layer. Again, you don't need to pick out the arrangement, just call it smooth muscle. Then on the very outside, now we're in connective tissue that supports the outside of the organ, and that is adventitia. Okay. So again, this is the adventitia.
And just one last smooth muscle, you don't want to distinguish if it's circular or longitudinal, just smooth muscle.
You don't have to worry about that. Just call it smooth muscle. You're off the hook on this one.
Yay.
All right. All right. So adventitia, this wavy stuff here, that's the smooth muscle in the wall. The vagina is a muscular tube. And then from here on up to the epithelium is all lamina propria. You can see it's fairly thick. And there's the epithelium again. Non-keratinized stratified squamous. Okay, one last slide. And this is a section through the mammary gland. Now what you have here are clusters of milk-secreting cells, the alveoli. And that's what these are. They secrete the milk in the interior, and then they're picked up by lactiferous ducts and then carried to the nipple, which are extruded. So here you have a lactiferous duct. Okay? And then just before the lactiferous duct passes through the nipple, there's a slight swelling. That's called the lactiferous sinus. You can see very nicely on those breast models. Okay? And in fact, questions on the breast I'll probably ask not from the slide, but from the model. Okay? Any questions? Okay, that's it for the slide.